Hi, Professor Johnson. It's Ashley Allen. Today is June 28th, 2018. Woo woo, our last lab, but it's taught me a lot to be hands-on. So here's our cow eye. As you know, in part one, I have cut into it and taken pieces out of it. So right now I'll try to hold it intact so I can go step by step on what I did or what I noticed. So this part of the eye, as you can see, this is where we make eye contact with people or animals. This is the cornea. So the cornea is much thicker than I thought when I cut into it, which I guess makes sense because it's a protective layer. But you can see I cut into it. And when I cut into it, the aqueous humor came out. And I suppose that it must be a thin, clear like substance, but mine was also thin, but it was dark. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the preservatives, formaldehyde with the pupil and the iris. I don't know, but it was dark, but nonetheless it was thin, and it came out when I cut the cornea. And let me pull this apart here. And if I kind of squeeze this, the cornea, you could see possibly the pupil in there, but maybe the lens too. It's a really dark spot, but you know, the pupil is basically this, you know, our eye, where it contracts and dilates based off the light coming in, and where we look people in the eye. Look me in the eye, my mother used to say. So I'm going to flip this over, and there is the iris. Dun dun dun. This was hard to get out. I've kind of mangled it a little bit. So here's the iris. This is the color portion of our eye. For example, I have green eyes. This is based off of genetics, of course, or a lack of coloration. But so here's the iris, the pupils in there, and then here's the inside, the interior part of the cornea. Now, the cornea is a portion of the sclera, which is the white part of our eyeball. So I just wanted to mention that. So as I cut into the iris, trying to get the lens, I encountered as I mentioned, first the aqueous humor to get in the cornea, and then as I cut further, I ran into the vitreous humor, which is here, and it's gross. I could not keep it intact. There's some tissue in there as well, probably some connective tissue. The vitreous humor is a gelatinous-like substance, and it was probably more like in a sac, but it's there behind the lens to protect it and probably keep it, you know, sturdy in place. So I will move our vitreous humor, our gel-like substance. But so once that came out, I was able to reach the lens. So the lens is, it makes sense to me after I read about cataracts, and the protein is what builds up in the lens and it creates the cloudiness. Therefore, you have a cataract and it's difficult to see and causes blindness. And it makes sense that they can replace it with a plastic portion, because the plastic portion probably is less likely to build up protein. But it's sturdy and hard. Although my guess is it floats in that vitreous humor to look around and move and control where the eye is going. Of course, muscles come into play there. So this is also part of the sclera. This is the choroid, and as we read, that humans have melanin in their choroid, and cows, and also I'm going to mention cats, do not have melanin. And I mention cats because I always see their eyes glow in the dark. A little creepy. But it allows them to have better night vision. And so this choroid, I described it in part one as like a dark iridescent color. And I'm assuming this iridescent is allowing the reflection of light. So again, that's part of the sclera. So behind, here's the anterior part of posterior part of the eye. There's our optic nerve, well, the cow's optic nerve, which just leads the pathway down to the chiasm, goes to the thalamus, all the way back, you know, to the occipital lobe. And there are the structures of the eye. Pretty darn interesting, somewhat nauseating, but I still appreciate the process. Thank you.